Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Renewed Minds. It's my pleasure to welcome our guest onto the show, Anoushka Marcin. She's a UK expert on narcissism and trauma abuse. And she, speaks on this topic with over 1 million views on the expertise of narcissism. So she has a lot of in-depth knowledge on this, which is another reason why I wanted her to come on the show for us to have a discussion and, to impact lives and see how we can save lives and also touch other people that do not even know about this subject or might have a misunderstanding or misconception, as many people do. I'm sure you'll also agree, Anoushka. So I don't know if there's anything you want to ask for our audience today, Anoushka.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And like you, I share the same kind of enthusiasm in helping others, in informing other people or giving them more information about what this is, about personality disorders, in particular narcissistic personality disorders, narcissistic abuse, trauma, PTSD, the unfortunate effects that everybody that is involved with one of these toxic individuals kind of has to go and suffer.
Yeah, it's really an in-depth, because at the end of the day, like, yes, it's been a tough year for like the world with the pandemic and everything, and I'm sure in the UK as well. I mean, even like the cases I've been seeing as well, like in terms of like people's mental health and everything. But
totally.
Yeah, in my like perspective, I believe this is also a mental pandemic as well that people are not aware of. In fact, I even also believe maybe some of our world leaders might even suffer from this. I'm not going to name any names, but so it's very common, and people might just think, oh, it's just maybe a disease or something that they've not come into contact with, and they might have even from friends, co-workers, maybe even people, intimate relationships, which is the more dangerous aspect. So if you can just, in your own words, Anoushka, how would you define it, narcissistic abuse, in the context of a relationship or in a friendship?
You see, the abuse that happens is on so many levels, because the reason why this type of abuse is so damaging is because when you get romantically involved with someone, or when you're in close contact with someone, what happens is you spend a lot of time with that person and you interact with them. You share a lot of information. You share a lot of experiences together. You share emotions together. So retrospectively, you kind of know each other really, really well. And when you get to know somebody, you never believe that person is going to abuse you, is going to upset you, is going to gaslight you, manipulate you, control you. And you see, the thing is with narcissists, because they have issues in terms of being able to relate to other people, because really ultimately that's what we're talking about. Personality disorder is a disorder of being able to interact or to relate to another person, in particularly bond or attach. So that can work in many areas, whether that's in a romantic relationship, friendship, or even in a family setting as well. Because I mean, the effects and the abuse are far-fetching as well in a family setting. So what we're talking about here is the dysfunctional way that these individuals relate to others or bond. And so when you are somebody who's on the receiving end of that, never in your wildest dreams would you ever think that a person like this even exists. I mean, sure, you see it on the television, there's lots of films that portray narcissistic individuals. I mean, you hear the word narcissist, but what does that actually really mean? What does it mean to be gaslighted? What does it mean to be manipulated? And I feel like there's the kind of issue. It's not the fact that we don't know about it, because I think there's a lot of information there. But I just think, do people really know what we're talking about when we say, oh, do you feel like you're being manipulated? Do you feel like you're being controlled? Because you know, I think there's a big kind of, there's a gap there. And also, I think people are really easier. They say the word narcissist, or they say someone is a narcissist, and it just easily comes out of their mouth. You know, like before, I feel like, you know, we say, "Oh, you're such a psycho," or you know, and
it just slips
you
off.
know, and it's and it's kind of like the same thing. And even a lot of these channels on YouTube or a lot of blogs talk about narcissism, but you know, narcissism, what we're talking about is a pathological disorder. We're talking, this is in the same kind of cluster as someone who has, you know, antisocial personality disorder, which is psychopathy, you know.
Dangerous, that sounds dangerous.
These are clinical, you know, these are clinical presentations. And the thing is, because we're talking about personality disorders, it's really difficult, because all of us have narcissistic traits, including myself. You know, we've all got it. But the thing is, there's different levels of where it's turned up or down. Yes. But where we differ to people who are narcissistic or who have personality disorders is that we have empathy, that we're able to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. And I think that's the key element here. But sure, like you say, I mean, with lockdown, with COVID, and with the second lockdown, I mean, we've heard a lot about domestic abuse, domestic violence.
Yeah, it's been on the rise, hasn't it? Yeah.
It has been on the rise. But whilst I have to say that most narcissistic individuals are not violent, they're not physically abusive. They are more psychologically, emotionally abusive. And I think that's where the issue is. A narcissist won't hit you. They won't you know, they won't abuse you like that, but they will psychologically, which is just as or even more damaging.
That is profound. And I'd just like to touch on a point that you actually made about, obviously it's a scale, but in terms of like maybe a red flag to watch out for, because obviously being extroverted and introverted is on a scale as well. So how would one then be able to define and see as a red flag, oh wow, you actually don't have any friends, you don't relate well to people, and trying to distinguish, well, they're just more of an introvert person? How would one need to be able to define and decide that, do you think?
That's a really, really good question. Yes, yes, of course. A lot of us are introverted, and we don't like, you know, we don't like drawing a lot of attention to ourselves. But there's a difference, you know, for example, who's someone who is narcissistic. Not all narcissists are over the top. Not all narcissists want attention. Some are happy being covert. Some are really happy not having the attention all on them. But I think what you need to look out for in terms of people like that is, how do they make you feel? What is the feeling that you get about them? This is about instinct, okay? Our instinct, or our gut instinct, or our eternal voice, that will never let us down. And I think a lot of us think, oh, there's something a bit odd about that person. Oh, but it's okay. We kind of discount it, but we really have to listen to that. It's about connecting to ourselves and really checking in, like, how does that person make me feel? You know, it's not just that the narcissist may be introverted. It's not that maybe that's just one of the traits of a narcissist, not being as forthright or as confident coming out. You know, you've got to look, there's so many other elements to it. So that's just, you're talking about here is just one trait of someone being very quiet and not wanting to go out. But I find that the majority of narcissistic individuals, because they want to get away from who they really are, they are extroverted. It is. It's to feed that feeling of not feeling good enough. If they are able to have a lot of attention, that means validation. So then they feel good about themselves. So they generally will try and get that kind of adoration or that kind of adrenaline hit from other people around them, whether that's directly, being outwardly wanting it, or whether that's, a university professor getting it from their students, or, because they know a lot of knowledge, that's like more of a covert narcissist.
I was even about to mention that. Would you be referring to a covert narcissist in that respect?
Yes, covert narcissists. Now, I did a video about this yesterday over on YouTube, and I feel I think it's really important to mention this type of narcissistic individual.
Yeah.
And like what I'm going to say is like I said in the video, you've got the umbrella term personality disorder, then you've got cluster A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And the covert narcissist fits into the cluster B, which is the antisocial, it's the histrionic, it's the borderline narcissistic. So you've got 4 classifications.
Yeah.
Borderline literally has just gone from classification C to a B. So that's just that's snuck in there, because it used to be 3. It used to be called the dark triad. So that one has just snuck in there. Anyway, so with a covert narcissist, it is exactly as the name suggests, the covert. You're not going to just spot them straight away. These are the quiet ones. These are the university professors, in there. Oh. And I'm not saying that all university professors are bad. I'm just using that as an example, because they are everywhere. Narcissistic individuals, like 6% of the population is narcissistic, are diagnosed.
Wow,
that's a lot, isn't it? 6% of the population that we know about.
And another aspect is, touch on a point, we're living and breathing with people, like you said, we all have traits. They tend to do, would you say that narcissists, they tend to do well in job interviews, due to their skilled manipulation and gaslighting?
Oh God, absolutely. Yes. This is why they're really successful, because they're able to play a role. They are able to play a role. They're really good at that. They've learned that from childhood.
It's all just like, life is just like a film to them, and you're there to give them supply and energy in that respect. I think that was something we were talking about energy.
Yes, you're right. Yes, you're absolutely right. They do regard life as a film, because when you're watching a film, you're detached from it. Do you remember what I was saying earlier? They cannot connect. They have issues in relating. And that's the same thing. Nothing seems real. There is no depth of feeling. There's no feeling happy. There's no feeling sad. It's just like, oh, right. It's just, okay. It's just nothing.
Kind of like, if you would say, which is one of the top topics, like as a red flag wanted to discuss, maybe, would you say inappropriate emotions or flashes of inappropriate emotions? What kind of instances would someone that's not aware of what they're going through would have to watch out for? Like, what would you class as inappropriate emotions? And maybe if you could give some scenarios.
Yeah, no, sure. And this is really good. Absolutely. It's a really good point. What I will say is, when you haven't experienced a narcissist in your life, it's going to be really hard for you to relate to what I'm going to say, or to really understand it, because, and I'm really happy that you haven't, but you need to be aware that it's not easy to spot one. It's not easy. I think probably me or you would be able to, because we've had experiences, or we've had an experience with a narcissist, so we understand. There's that fine line, isn't there? There's a fine line, and they cross it all the time. So what I would say,
with consistency,
I know that's putting it mildly. What I would say is, their behaviors, when you really, really look at it, like if you stop and think and you analyze, okay, this is why a lot of therapists are really fooled, especially in couples counseling or marriage counseling. A lot of therapists get it wrong, where they re-traumatize the victim, and they're siding with the predator, or they're siding with the narcissist. These people have really refined skills, and I will go into that. I'll go into that later, why they do. It is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good thing, because it's not a very human kind of trait to actually have, to become, as humans, we're not predatory mammals. Actually, we're, that's not really our, you know, humanistic trait to be a predator. That's not what we do. So it's it's a dysfunction. It is a dysfunction. This is their way of, you know, surviving in their environment. But going back to what you have said, so the behaviors of, you know, people like this is, yes, they do have inappropriate emotions. They do ask inappropriate questions, sometimes maybe even personal questions. You will find that with people like this, when you first meet them, they are the bestest friends. They are your bestest friends. They try to get in there and try and, you know, gather as much information as they can over you and try and be that person that you wanted in a friend or in a partner. And this is called love bombing.
Yeah.
Okay.
You also call it mirroring as well.
Mirroring, yes, absolutely. Yes, it's called mirroring.
So our audience get familiar with all these concepts as well.
Oh, good. Yes, of course. And they do this because they really want you to connect to them. They don't want you to know that they have dysfunction. So if they mirror you and you find that there's some commonality and duality between you and that person, it means that it's more likely or more easier for you to make friends with them. And if you're friends, that means that your guard comes down, so you begin to trust them. And that's how it all develops. And then there's probably like a more prolonged period of love bombing to make sure that the target is secure. And then the narcissist will become themselves moody, depressive, anxious. There's always issues. There's always a drama. But why didn't you do that? I thought you were going to do this for me. There's always conditions. There's always conditions. And you're constantly feeling like you can never do anything that's good enough. And this is why I say you've got to pay attention to your feelings. How is it making you feel? How do you feel? It's very important to stay connected and true to yourself. And also with people like this, you have to have boundaries. You've got to know what your boundaries are. What is comfortable for you and what is not? Where does that line end? Okay, and that's what's really important. But like I said, if you haven't been around a narcissistic individual, this is going to be really difficult to fathom, because it will be things that they say. It's the inappropriateness of it all, and we can mistake it for it being someone being really interested in us.
Definitely.
You know?
And just even on that point that you made, I think I even mentioned it on a previous episode. It's like, from my previous experiences, like you're saying, almost as if you'd be in a situation whereby you'd have to like teach the person how to love, which is just really strange. Like, you're having to teach them like a basic stuff just for them to be able to, like, you know, learn. And I guess that links into mirroring as well, and, you know, learning how to love bomb and everything. So yeah, definitely red flags to watch out for, guys. Another one of the topics I wanted us to discuss was this sense of craving of power and control. Like, if we can just go into like in scenarios about what to watch out for.
They with power and control, when you feel like you're in control of another person or a situation or an experience, it makes you feel important. And they like to feel important. And they like to have that attention, that validation from, it's an outward from their environment, outward attention. This is for them, this is the fuel for them. They have to, and that makes them, and it makes them feel important, it makes them feel good enough. And the reason for this is again the dysfunctional childhood that these individuals would have suffered. It's where it started from is where their parents discarded them. Their parents, this is where it all stems from. So the child, when it feels like it's rejected, the child then has to change who they are, because that's the message that parent is sending them. Is, I have to change. I can't be myself. So if I take on another role, that means that my parents are going to like me. If I'm going to do what my parents want me to do, my parents are going to like me, right? Can you see how then this goes into adulthood? This doesn't change that process.
That makes a
but
lot
it's very sad. It's love that ultimately people with personality disorders are looking for love, they have been rejected as children,
Yeah.
They would have suffered an emotional breakdown, that they wouldn't have been aware that they have been going through this.
Wow.
And so that's why these behaviors then carry on into adulthood, because where it's worked in childhood, where it's worked in adolescence, and you know, growing up through school, why wouldn't it work in adulthood? It does. And the reason why they control is exactly this, because if you're in control of a situation and you can manipulate the outcome, you don't have to be so nervous, so anxious about something happening that you haven't accounted for, because they can't deal with change. They're very mechanical. Remember, this is logical thinking. There's no emotion here. So either, you know, this is very much left brain thinking. Right brain is more creative, emotional. Narcissistic individual, very logical thinking. Okay, so it has to be all very logic mapped out, but I need to know what the outcome is going to be, and I will manipulate in between for it to happen. And that's why they do that.
Would you then say, like, on that point you made, would you then say for people that are currently in relationships that are seeing signs or about to go in one, the importance of like knowing about the family dynamics, family structure, would you say that that's one of the top things to watch out for, like the backgrounds, siblings, how they relate with their parents, like
I would say that's a really important point. However, narcissistic individuals will never admit that they've had a really difficult childhood. They'll say, my childhood's been fine. We're all okay. We're fine.
Yeah.
What's the issue here?
So you're the issue, not me.
Yeah, it's, you know, you have to be the detective. You have to be the detective. You have to know this. If you are uncomfortable, the bottom line is, if you are uncomfortable in your relationship, you need to do some investigation. Why is it? Is it you, or is it your partner? And if it's your partner, what is it about your partner that makes you feel like this? First of all, ascertain, what is it that you feel? What is it that's making you feel like this? And then go forward, do your own investigations. This is really, really important, because a narcissistic individual is never going to tell you, or they're never going to tell you the truth. They're never going to justify you. They're never going to validate you. This is about them.
And especially that can be extremely difficult. I mean, for our viewers, that can be extremely difficult for someone who's currently in a relationship with a narcissist, if they're emotionally also attached person. Obviously, if they love the person, then it's going to be really difficult in some cases for them to actually like pull away, because they might be also, you know, because they've manipulated them and cut off probably all their other relationships, they just rely on them for like emotional support. So how would they even try to even go about that, trying to even figure that out?
That's a really good point, and it's a really tough one as well, because what you're talking about here is something called a trauma bond and codependency.
Precisely.
And codependency, and you will frequently find these types of dynamics where there is a codependent with a narcissist, simply because you're right, they simply rely on the narcissist to validate them. You know, they've been programmed so that you know, the narcissist is their world. And ultimately what we're talking about here is detachment. The codependent to realize what is going on here. What is it that the narcissist serves them? How is it that the narcissist how is it that relationship works for you? In most cases, to be honest with you, it's really the prevalence of a codependent staying with a narcissist. This is what usually happens. They do end up staying with narcissists. They don't actually leave. It means, I would say, for that person, if you know that something is wrong, I would say go to therapy. Try and figure out why it is that you also have a difficult attachment issues to a narcissistic individual, because you know what, you run the risk of like literally being further abused, being further emotionally damaged, and not being able to escape at all. I mean, honestly, it's one of the hardest things. And it takes a lot of time. It's about, you know, these codependents are, you know, they've got cognitive dissonance, which means
Yeah,
that they
yeah,
can't see straight. They're very they're very traumatized, and in a lot of cases that they will also defend their abuse. They will also defend the narcissist, go, no, my relationship's fine, it's all okay, but inside, they are really getting upset and everything. So it's a really tough one, and I would say that I would ask for outside help.
yeah,
Maybe try staying away from the narcissist for like longer periods of time during the day, for example.
yeah,
It's about trying to separate yourself and trying to educate yourself that what is happening here isn't a very good dynamic, it's damaging. It's just, it will take time. It is one of
yeah.
those things, it does take time.
I mean, I know you wouldn't, and I wouldn't personally tell any or advise anyone to break up with their relationship.
Yeah.
It has to be up to them. But I think one thing that has to be like, paid attention to in if one person is telling you that watch out, and if you're hearing it from several angles that watch out, friends, family, then it might be time to just take a step back and actually analyze and see, okay, what's going on here? Like you said, whether through therapy or anything. But I mean, ultimately, the decision will have to be theirs. But like you say, it's really dangerous. You can open themselves up to further emotional abuse,
Yeah.
and trauma, and just keep going through that cycle. So I mean, would you agree with that? Is that something for them
Yes.
to watch out for?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, that's fine. Then I think one of the other topics, if we've got enough time for it, that I
Yes.
wanted us to just briefly explore was just the scenario. I think we briefly touched on it. Is being because there was something that at a point in time as well that I read into about the science of apology. There's and to be heard. There's actually like a steps for your partner to feel that, and there's obviously an apology that is just said for the sake of it, just to move on.
Yeah.
So I think one of the other red flags to watch out for is maybe seeing a partner that never apologizes. And when I mean never apologizes, I'm referring to, that's not a heartfelt apology. So I don't know if you can maybe elaborate on that for us or give us some
Sure.
examples in regards to that.
No, absolutely. This is another red flag. Absolutely. Someone who doesn't take responsibility when it really blatantly is their issue. A narcissist doesn't want to take responsibility for it, because then you have to be held accountable. And I feel like if somebody is held accountable and they say sorry, they learn from that and they try their hardest never to repeat that mistake.
Right, yeah.
We're all human. We can make a mistake, of course.
Yeah,
but we are sorry and we learn from it and we try our hardest not to repeat that.
Yeah.
That's the key here. I think that's the issue here. Like with a narcissist, yes, sorry, okay, great, sorry, but there's no learning, there's no actually that's about. So they continue to repeat the same mistake. It's like so the apology is it's actually a really simple concept. When you say sorry, it means that you acknowledge that you have made a mistake, because we're human and we all make mistakes, and you're going to move forward from it because you're going to learn from that mistake, right? But with a narcissistic individual, they don't seem to do that because they don't want to take accountability or responsibility for that mistake. It's always your fault. You made me do it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you're laughing at it now, but when you're in that situation, when you're experiencing that, you can't really see the wood from the trees, because that is gaslighting. Again, it's about altering your beliefs. All right. And that's the manipulation. You made me do it. It's your fault. I did this because of you. So therefore you're renouncing all sorts of, or any type of responsibility for that action. And when you behave or when you like perform an action, it's you doing that, not anybody else, but a narcissist or a toxic individual will not take accountability for it. So that is what you need to look out for, is someone who is willing to admit they made a mistake, stand up and say, hold their hands up and say, yeah, you know, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, and learn from that and move forward from it, and hopefully not do it again. Because when you say sorry to someone, when I say sorry to someone, it's like, okay, I made a mistake, I'm trying to learn from it, and I will do my hardest to not make that mistake again, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just like the science of apology, which I was talking about before. I think a key thing for us as well to like realize is that, and like you said, for them people to watch out for, is the fact that no one is perfect. I'm not perfect. No, nobody's perfect.
No.
So yeah, so I think this should actually be one of the easiest red flags for people to, you know, flag up and say, okay, what's going on here? And like I said before, it's not even just about just saying sorry. It's like you said, the science of apology, I won't do it again. It's not a case of, you know, it's just repetitive, it's coming again, and you find you're in the same pattern over and over. So I think it's stuff like that that people have got to be aware of. I mean, I don't know if from your experiences, your previous experiences, but from mine, I would have been in situations from my previous experiences where I would actually have to sit down with the narcissist to tell them that you do realize that this did not happen, and you know, because of so much gaslighting, and then just to get them to apologize, but get to a realization for myself that that apology is not genuine, but for the sake of doing it to move on to the next, you know, thing. So I think those are really important points. I don't know if maybe we could just close off on maybe one of your previous experiences in regards to that in the apology context.
Well, no, you're absolutely right, and I totally agree with you. And it happens in that kind of a scenario. I mean, from the narcissistic people that I have had in my life, exactly the same thing. You know, it's a sorry, it's a throwaway comment. It doesn't mean anything. There's no substance to it. It's a form of gaslighting, isn't it? Because you're ultimately changing somebody else's reality. You're saying that something
precisely
didn't happen. So, you know, my experience is very similar to what you're saying. I've experienced it with people. I've had numerous narcissistic people around, you know, around me, like in a family context, also, in a romantic concept, you know. So, absolutely. People who just don't want to take accountability for their actions. Ultimately, that is the biggest red flag.
Yeah. And I think another thing I even just remembered, even like you said, you've seen it from families and stuff, even from friends in the past, where you'd see a genuine, heartfelt apology, long letter from the narcissist, but only for the person then to go back to the usual pattern. So like I said, if you see the usual patterns going on, then it's time to, I mean, we can never decide for people, but you know, it's a red flag that the brakes on for.
But the truth is, that person doesn't want to change. They have no interest in changing or doing anything different. It's basically, sorry, and I'm going to continue doing the same thing.
It's so
that's the truth of the matter, isn't it? That is the truth of the matter. They have no intention of changing.
Wow. Anyway, Anoushka, I just want to thank you so much, like, for taking the time out to come on the channel. I believe what you're doing is really impacting people's lives, and you know, being aware of this kind of abuse and educating people and also helping people heal. I'll also put on the comments for people to also check out your balanced psychologies as well, you know, for them to, you know, also see how you're going into depth with narcissism and the topic on that. So I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. perhaps in the future we can welcome you sometime again in the future to have a talk again. But it's been a pleasure having you on, and I just want to thank you so much, Anoushka. Really.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I really hope that this information gives value for your listeners as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it will add a lot of value to people's lives. And that's
good.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, Anoushka. Okay. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye. Hey guys, hope we enjoyed that episode with Anoushka. Hope it brought a lot of value, a lot of insight to you. We're going to be releasing a lot more episodes in future with specific themes on how to protect yourself and look at signs to notice to do with narcissists and just being healthy, blessed, and protecting yourselves. So just want to say, stay blessed, people, stay protected, like, comment, subscribe. It really does help support my channel and the cause that we're doing for people and to help and outreach to people. Thank you so much for listening, and peace out. Thank you.